Thank you so much, Uma. Good evening, everyone. My name is Prabhu, and thanks for that good introduction, Uma. So good to see everyone. Congratulations, Akriti, for your amazing transformation, and yes, great job, Michelle. So wonderful. So good. So today, we have a very exciting topic, and I'm, so happy to share this. And this topic is something which is very close to my heart. No, 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 no. It is actually very close to my stomach because few years back I had a pot belly, and after few years and things like that, we'll discuss on it, and I was able to, get over it, and that's what we are going to see this evening. So hang on. Let me just quickly share. All right, so I think everybody is able to see my screen. 1 minute. Good. So today, let's see, how to, break this weight loss jinx, right? So let's understand, what is this all about? One thing I can promise is I don't want to give you any diet plan or share any workout routines today. But what you'll hear today is a very simple science behind a sustainable weight loss and a long-term health. Something all of us can take away and apply in our own lives. Right? So let's keep it as interacting as possible, and let's move on. Good. So let me ask you a quick question. So how many of you believe that obesity is mostly genetic? Any raise of hand or type in chat. How many of you believe obesity is mostly genetic? Right? So have you heard this before? My parents were overweight, so obviously I'm going to be overweight too. Everyone in my family is like this. It's just in my blood, right? So yeah, I mean, to some extent it can be true, but you know what? They actually do not contribute to the entire thing for this obesity, right? Otherwise, let's look at this, a lighter one. Here's someone who's trying to blame the, genetics for their obesity. So this person actually goes to the doctor and say, you know what? Obesity runs in my family. But here is the response that we get from the doctor. No, the problem is actually, nobody runs in your family. So as I said, it's very easy to blame the genetics, but the real issue is much, much deeper. So let's understand, what are those, deeper issues, right? So so, I mean, most of us would have actually, seen people, or personally, you would have experienced, falling into this trap, right? One of the biggest traps, and when you're trying to lose weight, right? So, have you seen this pattern, right? You basically, you're someone was trying to lose weight, probably you're about 80, 90 kilos or something like that, and with full josh, with full enthusiasm, you start your weight loss journey, and to see that good, you start seeing results, right? Within few weeks, within maybe 1 or 2 months, you start seeing your weight coming down. So from 85, this person has come down to 75, and you know what, over a period of time, the 75 actually started becoming 80, right? Have you seen this pattern? Right? Have you heard people going through this pattern? And to see that this 80 actually becomes 85, right? So basically the weight comes down, increases. So it's a kind of, sinusoidal pattern. So what happens is many people actually, what? They give up. They say, you know what? This doesn't work for me, right? That's what, most of the people do. And you know what? This is actually called as yo-yo diet. Weight increase and coming down, weight increase and coming down, right? So where are we missing actually, right? So what is that science behind this weight loss? We are missing. So let's get into deeper aspect of it. Okay. Now imagine, you're having this, setup at home, right? So you have a thermostat at home, maybe set to 25 degrees. Now the room you start feeling warmer because maybe because of humidity and things like that. So you switch on the AC, right? So you switch on the AC, and then the AC temperature is actually set to 20 degrees. So AC is now started doing its job. Now, as the AC starts doing its work, right, trying to bring down the temperature, the moment, right, the room temperature hits 20, because AC is doing its job, right? The moment your room temperature hits 20, suddenly, you know what? You have a room heater which starts working. So it says, you know what, my job is to bring the temperature 25. So you know what, the room heater starts working, right? So the AC again cools down. AC is trying to bring down the temperature because its job is to make it 20, but the heater is actually trying to bring up the temperature over a period of time, right? Your There is a kind of little war that is going on between your AC and your room meter. That's exactly what happens inside your body also. That exactly what we saw in the yo-yo diet, right? Weight is coming down and then weight is increasing. Weight is coming down, weight is increasing, right? Like your AC and your room heater, right? So let's see, right? Why this happens, right? So how many of you think that eating less and moving more is a good advice? I used to think like that, right? Because it's very obvious, right? If someone eats less, obviously, when they eat more, they tend to lose weight, right? Let's look at it. So this concept, what happens is, if weight loss is that simple, if everybody knows that eating less and moving more is that simple, all it needs is a little bit of willpower and a little bit of discipline, right? Because today, everyone, right, almost all working professionals are some way or successful in their careers, right? They have done their masters, they have done their degrees, they have done some certification. They have really struggled a lot to get to that position. Okay, so the matter of willpower and discipline is actually, it is not a question. If that is the case, the world should not have this epidemic of obesity, right? But unfortunately, that is not, right? There is something deeper to it, right? So clearly the problem is not about being disciplined or willpower. It's something else actually, right? It is something like this, right? Let's say, for example, your mobile battery, right? It's just about 10%, right? So having that 10% of mobile charge, will you start actually opening up all your applications and start using it? Definitely not, right? You will maybe open a very important app. Maybe you're chatting with someone, only that WhatsApp is running, or maybe something which is very, very important. You will not open 10, 20 apps with a battery usage of just 10%. That exactly what happens, right? Because when you are feeding in less and moving more, it is not actually matching, right? Somewhere, there is a disconnect, right? So let's see where exactly the calorie goes, because everybody eat 3 meals a day, and that is nothing but calories, right? So all the food that we eat, somewhere it is being used, right? So there are many, many functions what actually body takes care, right from your brain function to your heat production, you're making new proteins, cell repair. I mean, there are so many actually, right? Which we don't have any control over it, right? These are basically called basal metabolism rate. So that is the bare minimum what your body actually requires to operate, right? So when we feed in something, right? So this allocation happens to the body. So who basically decides whom to give how much of calories? Any idea? Our entire body actually, controls. So we have zero conscious control over how the body allocates energy. It is something like this: when you eat 2000 worth of calories of food, your body doesn't ask you, should I send 300 calories to brain, should I send 150 calories to liver? Definitely not. Instead, your body actually assigns energy according to what it basically wants you to keep you alive, right? We don't have any control over it, right? So 2000 input, everything is actually distributed depending upon what is that is required. So we talked about the basal metabolic rate, right? It actually depends upon your age, your gender, your climate. I mean, it depends on so many parameters. That's how the body is able to calculate and allocate, the energy. But we just talked about eat less and move more, right? So we are now trying to reduce our calorie intake and then trying to move more. So 2000 now becomes 1000 calories, right? Now, body is very smart. It will still not compromise that overall 20% of calorie for brain function, right? And body is very smart. Your heart and lungs will still get that whatever calories that is required. Your liver and kidneys still get that baseline energy. Now, where does the compromise happens, right? The compromise happens in your muscle building, your fat burning, your thyroid functions, your reproductive hormones, your physical energy, right? All this actually gets compromised because the input, which was supposed to be 2000, has now reduced to 1000 calories, right? So that's why people start feeling tired, people start feeling cold, people start feeling hungry, mental foggy, right? So low metabolism. All this is because of there is a decrease in the input, and obviously the output is also decreased, right? So the concept basically, eat less and move more, maybe it is really not going well. We are basically trying to drain our battery, right? So we have reduced our calories intake, and obviously we have reduced our calorie out also. So this concept, maybe, there is a big disconnect, and that's one of the myth why people are not able to lose weight. Let's look at the next one. Very obvious thing, right? So how many of you believe that exercise is a magic bullet for weight loss? Very obvious, right? Because I mean, exercise is something which we cannot ignore, right? We need exercise and things like that. But before we understand the concept of how exactly exercise helps or whether it is not helping, let's understand how our total energy expenditure happens. We just saw the calorie in, right? All the calories basically distributed. Let us understand in a deeper perspective. So first thing is the energy expenditure goes to your basic basal metabolic rate. Second thing is your thermogenetic effect of food. So whatever the food that we eat, all the digestion, assimilation, everything, so it goes to that chunk. Third is your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. What does it mean? Maybe you're driving, you're just walking, you're just climbing the floor, you're sitting, you're washing your vessels, you're washing your clothes. All these are non-exercise thermogenesis activity. Next is your post-exercise oxygen consumption. Let's say you do a workout. After that, you're gasping for breath. You need more oxygen, right? So that actually requires some kind of energy. And finally comes exercise, right? So it is something like this, right? Your children, many of you are having children or child or something like that. Let's say your child has got art and craft subject in the school, and next the couple of months, they're going to start their final exam. Now the art and craft is just a add-on. It's just a very small contribution to the entire total of the max, right? Now, just because art and craft is also a subject, do you recommend your child to invest 50% of the effort in learning art and craft? Or will you tell your child to focus on your core subjects? Definitely on your core subjects, right? That is exactly what happens in your exercise also. The minute we think about losing weight, immediately we jump on to extensive exercise. But you know what? The contribution, right, for exercise is very, very less. Right? That is the reason we do not get to see that huge results. Right? So let's get real for a moment. Right? How many of you have come home after an hour of swimming or after an hour of intensive workout, and then you just want to hog something? You're so much extremely, extremely, hungry. How many of you have done that? It has happened for me. It happens for everyone. Normally, you probably eat two dosas or two chapatis, but the time you come back from your workout, you need double the amount, right? That is the biggest problem there, right? So your calories is out increases, and your calorie in also increases, right? So the biggest problem here in terms of exercise is there is a hidden culprit, which is called compensation, right? So we are basically compensating our calories out with a lot of calorie in, right? So that's what we are going to see here. You increase your calories out because of a lot of workout, but you know what? It gets compensated by increasing your calories in. So there's a catch, right? So we are basically nullifying the effect, right? So we saw few things. We saw about exercise, we saw about calorie in versus calorie out, calorie deficiency. So many things are there, right? So what are we going to do now? How are we going to address this weight loss problem? Right? As we discussed, we saw eat less momo doesn't work. Cutting down the calories didn't work. Exercise also didn't work much, right? So where is that missing gap? Right? So because the entire formula we have been following wrongly for so many years, and then we are trying to overcome obesity, right? So it's not going to happen, right? So let's go back to our original discussion about the thermostat and your AC, right? So when we are actually trying with these things, this two AC and heater are working, right? There is something called this thermostat set point, because unless and until we don't address that set point, it is going to be a tug of war for life. It is going to be a yo-yo diet for life, right? So what is that set point actually called as? That set point is nothing but your insulin, right? So this is where there is a big ignorance that has happened. A big thing is actually missed out, right? So before we actually talk about or understand what exactly insulin are all about, let's go back to our simple biology class. Let's go back to our school days, right? So what happens to what we eat? Every day we eat, right? Have you ever realized, have you thought what basically happens, when we eat our food? Let's look at that. Let's understand that first, right? So when we eat our food, it goes to stomach, it gets mixed with your stomach acid and things like that. It goes to your intestines, right? So what this intestine does is basically converts all the carbs that you eat, and it converts into sugar. Basically, it is glucose. So this glucose is basically sent to your bloodstream, right? So once it moves into your bloodstream, your blood glucose level actually increases, right? Now, the minute there is an increase in your blood glucose, pancreas is watching. So the pancreas, what happens? It sends a huge amount of insulin. For what purpose? Insulin is basically like a key. So insulin goes and opens that cell, and then that's where the glucose enters into each cell, and then we get energy. Simple concept of what exactly happens when we eat, right? So we talked about insulin, and this is what insulin does, right? Now, if that is the case, the next question is insulin good or bad, right? Let's see. Actually it is good and actually it is bad. It's like a two-edged sword, right? How does it happen, right? So this is a very typical case or normal scenario where your insulin raises when we eat and insulin comes down when we are in the fasting phase, right? So if you actually look at the space between your breakfast, lunch and dinner and your sleeping your fasting time, your insulin level actually goes down. Now the problem here is we don't allow our system to rest now, right? After breakfast, we have a mid-morning snack. After mid-morning snack, we have some lunch. After lunch, we have a mid-evening snack, right? So we are not giving any time for the body to actually rest, right? So body becomes very resistant, right? There's something like this, right? How many of you love to eat this sweet? Gulab jamun, everybody loves, right? But tell me something, just because you love gulab jamun, if I offer you this much of gulab jamun, what will you say? Oh, yo, you become resistant to gulab jamun, right? You just run away from gulab jamuns, right? The minute you think about gulab jamun, you just run away. That is exactly what is happening in insulin as well, right? Because there is so much of sugar and insulin, right? The insulin gets jammed, it is unable to open, and you get into a situation where your body is trying to push glucose into the cell, but the insulin is not working. Just because insulin is not working, your body is again trying to push. That is exactly like similar to what you see on the image, right? The security guard is trying to push people inside a very already crowded metro, right? So we get into this kind of situations, right? So very, very important thing, right? Concept to understand about insulin resistance. So here's another question. People can quickly type, what has 0 calories and 0 carbs, yet still contributes to obesity? Quickly, quickly. We have just about a couple of minutes. It's actually stress, right? So what happens during stress? In our Paleolithic time, right, when man used to go and hunt, right, whenever he encounters the situation, what happens? His body immediately goes into a fight mode or a flight mode. That means this entire energy is actually redirected towards his muscle, either to fight a situation or run away from that situation. That time, your immunity, your reproductive system, your growth, not everything actually takes for a toll. Everything is actually halted for about few minutes, right? So in those days, what happens? This is just a acute phase, right? After some time, once the situation is taken care, everything becomes normal. But unfortunately, today all of us are actually going through a chronic phase of stress, relationship problem, target deadlines, and then finance, health issues. There are so many situations that people encounter, that acute phase actually become a chronic phase, right? So what happens is increases the cortisol, and the cortisol basically increases all the sugar, all the energy from everything, and gives to your muscle, gives to your muscle, right? And that increases your insulin. So again, it is a catch 22 situation, right? So insulin, cortisol, insulin, cortisol. So that's where people end up in the situation. One more quick question. What is the single best free medicine that you can skip which leads to obesity? Any guesses? That is sleep, right? Today, many people are actually deprived of sleep, right? So your sleep loss is basically increasing a lot of stress. Obviously, because of that, your cortisol is getting spiked, and which is directly connecting to your insulin resistance. And obviously, your final craving is junk food, right? So we talked about so many things. We talked about stress. We talked about sleep. We talked about eat less, move more. We talk about so many things, right? So what is the missing gap? What is the missing piece, right? If all the information just I just shared, it's about myths and insulin and everything is available actually in Google, YouTube, and Amazon, right? But why is this global obesity rate still climbing? That is the question that we all of us need to ask, right? So let's move on. Again, a quick quiz. I'm sure everybody know all these people, right? So what is common among them? The common denominator is everyone either had a coach or having a coach, right? Now, what is the significance of having a coach? Because the information I just shared a few minutes back, right? It is not a secret. It is available in almost every platform, right? So we live in an information overload era, right? That's, but what, why all these people, those successful, why are they spending millions and millions of dollars to a coach? Because a coach doesn't give information. A coach basically gives three important things, right? One, he gives a structure to the program. Second thing is it basically drives accountability, right? And third most important thing is the correction factor. Because if these three are missing, doesn't matter whatever information that you have, it is just remains as information, right? So coach plays a major role, right? So why am I so confident about it? Right? Remember in the beginning of the talk, I talked about, this topic is very close to my stomach. Let's see that, right? Few years back, I was like this, right? With a pot belly and things like that. That was in the year 2000 and before, right? I was about 83.5 kilos, 39 waistline. And when I did my transformation, thanks to my coaches, they helped me to bring down my weight to almost about 72.5 and then brought the waistline as well. This is almost 4 years back. Now, was it yo-yo diet? Was it still sustainable? Definitely yes, right? So what you're seeing here today, this is my today's report, 29th November 2025. Can you see my weight and other parameters? So because of all the guidance and things like that, I'm still able to, sustain my weight loss, right? So it's just about understand the science behind rather than just going with what everybody are saying, right? And finally, right, with a closing thought, uh, we all know that we all think or assume that what obesity actually starts at 40, right? But actually, what, it doesn't start at 40. Probably it would have started at 10 itself, right? A true lasting weight loss doesn't come from chasing calories. It comes from restoring your balance in hormones. And once you fix the root cause, the body naturally finds it healthy set point, right? So it was great talking to you, and back to my host.